Welcome to the Matchmaker Modern Mystery Quilt Along.
It's great to be doing another mystery quilt along with you all.
Exactly. Matchmaker is really different from our previous quilt alongs, and I think you're really going to have a fun time with it. So let's start. Well, just give me the premise of this whole thing, which is that there's a woman named Charlotte who's a screenwriter who specializes in rom-com movies. And she's writing a screenplay about a woman who has just lost her college sweetheart that she's been married to for 25 years. And she's lost him not recently, but she's beginning to plan to tiptoe back into the dating world and is trying to find a match for herself.
And matching, as you know, is something you often do in quilting, putting things together.
But matching isn't necessarily finding the same color. Sometimes it's an opposites attract situation, as it is in love, as we know. And sometimes they're similar. So in this scenario, you'll be writer's assistants, and you will be looking for matches among fabrics, pairs of fabrics.
And we're trying to kind of broaden the way you think about this. That, as we said, matching isn't always what's obvious. And, with every quilt along we do, we want you to kind of learn new ways of doing things, learn new ways of looking at your stash or at fabrics in general. So it's very much about, a similar scenario in the dating world. You see people for who they are, you discover new things about them, there are new layers that are uncovered, so it'll be similar with your fabrics.
You will not necessarily, you're not going to be trying to find it's not exact same pair. It's matching as in complementing each other or enhancing each other.
When two things become stronger than one or greater than one.
But they're not necessarily identical. So, and also in this particular quilt along, Charlotte crafts beautiful lines for her screenplays, but in real life, we know that you have to make conversation and you have to improvise your lines. And in that spirit, you will be learning some improvisational piecing techniques, as well as the more traditional piecing techniques that you might have used in the past. So this will be a combination in terms of techniques. There will be no templates. There will be no curves. This is very beginner friendly, should be easy breezy sewing and
thoughtful
sewing, and you may be using some techniques for the first time. So there'll be some learning for that.
So it's definitely improvisation within structure. And as with all of our quilt alongs, it's not a single structure. You're going to have choices along the way. So no two people will have identical quilts, to say the least. And if you're new to our quilt alongs, you might want to pop up to the main menu of our website and look at the virtual exhibitions from past quilt alongs. This quilt will look totally unlike anything we've done before, but the exhibitions give you a sense of how much variety there is within the quilt along.
So plan on a lot of discussion about color. Plan on learning some improvisational piecing techniques that will yield a quilt that will be different from any of the others you've seen in our quilt alongs. Plan on some great music. For romance-themed songs.
We always have a Spotify playlist to accompany each quilt along.
Plan on a lot of fun and plan on a beautiful quilt at the end of this.
And also count on having some really great community. If you're on Facebook, it's not required, but if you're on Facebook, the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics page will have hundreds of people invested in this quilt along, sharing stories, sharing updates, pictures of what they're making.
And also the palettes that they're using, because this quilt along will be stash friendly. We will be using solids for this particular one because there are a lot of there will be some small pieces, and that the graphics of solids work really well with that sort of thing.
But
You'll be able to use prints if you want, but it will be helpful for you to be able to see other people's palettes. We'll have a starter bundle available, and we'll talk a little bit more about fabric requirements in a minute, but the community that you will get as part of the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics group will really help you to make sure that you're, give you a second opinion if you want, or hundreds of second opinions.
And it enhances the experience.
Exactly.
So we will walk you through the fabrics we're using, give you a lot more detail about selection if you're using your own momentarily. I do want to talk a bit about the structure for those of you who are new to Quiltalongs and the cost. Yeah. It's a $35 cost for the entire pattern, which will be released in 6 installments. And it includes a video tutorial for each and every installment. It's a lot of content.
Absolutely.
So you'll just have that one-time fee that allows you to download the access information. As soon as you purchase it, you have a download that you get, you keep, you hang on to. That's all you're going to need for the entire Quiltalong to access a secret web page where we post everything. So when you make the purchase, I suggest you print out and save that download in a safe place because it's something we can't send again. But you'll have access for all of 2026 to all of this information. It's a Quiltalong. Many people will be working on it week by week and really keeping up. Others may not even begin until a month after the Quiltalong.
Or next year.
Yeah, right. There isn't a race here. We want you each to make the quilt you have the time and energy and ability to make.
So you'll be able to, once you get the receipt from your purchase, save that as a download. I would say 99% of the people who email us asking us to resend it have it in their download, and we can see sometimes that they've saved it 14 times and they just are not familiar with accessing downloads. So one of the technology requirements that you will have is understanding how to access your downloads, because that is a really critical part of being able and understanding how to use the technology. Your local public library, at least in the US, I don't know about other countries, have people who can help you with this if this is new, and you can take your devices in and they'll show you how to access your downloads. But you will need to learn. We're not going to send you links. We're not going to, there'll be one link on your receipt that you will click to download the instructions for the entire Quiltalong and the address that you'll need for the portal where everything will be found. So please make sure you understand how to use the technology before you sign up.
We try to keep it nice and simple, but you do have to have that basic understanding. And we also ask that you not share that secret web address with anyone. This is a lot of work, and we like to use a secret web address because it makes it easier for you all, but that is a private website. So please don't share that. Don't share images of the pattern, measurements. From the pattern. This is for everyone who's part of the Quiltalong, and just for those people.
So let's talk about the fabric requirements and how you can think about whether you want to buy this starter bundle that we're offering or whether you have fabrics in your stash that will work for this project.
So you'll see, if you go to the product page on our website, it lists the specific requirements for the 3 sizes that will be possible. One is kind of a large baby, small lap quilt. One is a napping quilt, which is roughly 4 feet by 6 feet. And one is a queen size quilt. each of those has slightly, obviously, different requirements. But the structure of the fabrics in the palette will remain the same for regardless of the size. So the starter bundle that Weeks has referred to is in front of us here. It has 31 fat quarters. There are darks, mediums, and lights, and basically just about equal quantities. We have 10 darks, 10 mediums, and there are 11 lights. Partly that way, people, if they want it to be a little less pink, they might take out a pink. If they don't want the gray, they can take out the gray. They can use them all. You can also add from your stash to any of these. This is enough fabric to make the napping quilt.
The other thing to think about is that you will need a sashing and binding fabric. You can use the same fabric for sashing and binding or have used two different ones. But if you decide to choose one of the fabrics that's in the bundle, you'll want to remove that fabric and not use it within the piecing of the rest of the pieced parts of the quilt.
Yeah, for instance, if you could hand me that top bolt, please. We're going to be using this dark blue, and we're going to use it for the sashing and binding, because for the napping quilt, a 2-yard piece works beautifully for the two. And I think in an ideal world, it's easiest to get one fabric for the sashing and binding because you're using long strips. But if we use this here, we would take that fabric, or a very similar one, is already in the bundle. So we would just remove that, because the goal of a sashing is to stand out and give an edge that is different from anything else. So if you have the exact same color in the piece top, it could kind of blend in and interrupt the sashing. There's plenty of fabric to remove one. You won't be shy.
Then you'll have 10 in each group then, if you do that.
Yeah, well, this would then have 9.
Right.
But if you could hand me the next one as another example, let's say you wanted to use this eggplant, which I love. I really love that. There's an eggplant already in here. So we would take this out, remove this, and put this in, and that way it won't accidentally butt up next to it. So we have a list of several different sashing / binding fabrics that we think look great. Let me slide this back in. We have the dark blue, we have an eggplant, we have an espresso, which is a deep, deep brown. I really like this. This is called khaki, and it's a very nice kind of neutral that is olivey. It's olivey. It's in the mediums. So if you used it, you would remove that one from the mediums. One other fabric we suggest would work well is our putty, which is in the light group. So if you use this, you would remove it from the lights for the piecing in the individual installments. You would just use it for the sashing and binding. So the requirements that are listed specify the yardage needed. So if you're using the bundle, that's there. If you're using your stash, it's fine to have fat quarters, quarter-yard cuts, little scraps. There are going to be cases where you use pieces that are maybe 1 inch by 9 inches. The biggest piece in the whole Quiltalong that you have to cut a single piece of is roughly 8 by 16. So most of the pieces, though, are kind of under 8 by 8. Yeah. So it really is, as you said, it's scrap and stash friendly.
So if you want to think about a different fabric to use for your sashing and binding, you might want to look at our YouTube tutorial on palette building part 2 that talks about background fabrics, but it will be a similar approach, and a lot of people have told us that's a very useful video.
That's a great
if you
idea.
Want to do if you want to think about a totally different fabric. And it also explains why we wouldn't use necessarily a bright fabric,
Yeah.
brighter than the rest, because it will distract from the piecing.
And the main idea, though, is you are getting these three different groups. And you'll see that, like, if I put my lights on top of my mediums, there's clear contrast. If I put my mediums on top of my darks, we also have contrast. Now, you're going to see there are a couple mediums that you might be on the fence about, because this red is just a bit lighter than that one. But if you use it against the eggplant, it appears much lighter.
So we'll get into the specifics of how to use the bundle and the palettes that we're using in the first part of the video. But, you know, for those of you who have jelly roll scraps, this will be helpful.
Yeah.
Because this is even if you get the bundle, this is a more is better situation, where having the more colors you can have, the more rich it will be.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that we have a lot of solids in our stash, and this is a great starting point. We could easily add more. The other thing is, if you wanted to go less all the way around the color wheel, you could remove the oranges and pinks and just go with greens, blues, purples, grays in each of these, and it will still work. You want variety within each pile, but the key here is going to be value difference.
We also like the Benartex fabrics for the weave, that it's not a coarse weave like Kona, which we find a little harder to work with, especially for smaller pieces. It works fine for things, large pieces, but when you're doing improvisational piecing in particular, where you might have a narrow strip that goes through it, that the raveling I find a little bit challenging. So we'll be using the Benartex Superior solids.
Yeah, but
even though the 300 and however many colors that they have in Kona really is, you know, is wonderful, but the challenge is that weave.
But if you're using your stash, you probably don't know which solid is which, and that's fine. You can mix and match, match brands. So this is how we're working with solids. We'd like to show you a sample palette. I'll move this one. Can I slide under you? Will you lift? And the tone-on-tone prints work really well for improvisational piecing and small pieces, because from a distance they read like a single color,
but they have a little bit more richness in terms of print. And a lot of you I know have for many people, the bulk of their stash is small scale tone-on-tone prints. So again, as Bill said, we've used all of the color wheel, all the way around the color wheel for the palettes that we're choosing. But you are welcome to have a more narrow palette if that works for you. You can do the whole thing. If you have enough of them, you can have the whole thing in just yellows and oranges or whatever if you wanted. So again, we're looking don't worry too much about exactly which pile things go in, because it's the Matchmaker Quiltalong. So what you're going to be looking at is can you take the fabric from the medium pile and use it with something in the darker pile? You don't have to use it with every single one. So for example, this kind of brick orange here is kind of close in value to this blue, but you can see that it would work with it because you'd have contrast.
If sewn together, you would see the edge.
Exactly. So, you know, you're going to be choosing for each unit you're sewing, there are going to be 2 colors. So
or more.
But you're going to be focusing on the contrast between those 2 colors. So as you post, because I know in previous Quiltalongs, people will post it like, does it go in this pile or does it go in this pile? there can be a little bit of flexibility. All that matters is that it works, that there's something in the adjacent pile that it can work with and have sufficient contrast, whether that's in, preferably in value, but also in hue.
And I think just kind of like the whole idea of the matchmaker is that these aren't going to be rigid combinations. This is part of what you're learning, is how to judge and react on the fly.
And to edit.
And to edit. But having 3 piles that feel, as a pile, they feel successful, that will work. Like, these definitely feel lighter than these. These definitely feel lighter than these. Individually, you might be on the fence about something, but we're here to guide you.
And the other thing is that there may be some that are debatable. Like, Bill chose this.
I know exactly what she's doing.
I feel like this is a little bit too saturated for the rest of the pile. So
I'm with you.
Okay, good. All right. So that can go in the doesn't work pile. So what we'll be doing is showing you in the first video how to edit and how to make sure that you're looking at hue, value, and saturation in each of your piles, and there's contrast within the pile, and then there's contrast among the 3 piles.
So again, like, as a reminder, this is just a preview video. This helps you begin to understand where you're going. But once you're in the Quiltalong, that first installment will have a lot more detail. But we do want, we know that in that first month before the Quiltalong begins, people love to think about their fabrics. And this way, you're kind of on the right track.
The one thing that I will say, if you're new to our Quiltalongs, is that you might be surprised at the amount of time you spend planning your palettes. That choosing the palette is not something that happens in 15 minutes. So don't plan on sewing 15 minutes after you open that first installment. You're going to really want to think through your palette. And if you are uncertain, or even if you're not, you might want to post it in the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics group and get other people's feedback. This is, we've said it before, and we'll just say it one more time. We don't recommend the process of taking a photo and putting it in black and white, because it doesn't work with saturation. It works with value only. And so this fabric would have been fine
in black and white. It would have looked like it belonged here.
Exactly, but it does not work. So invariably there will be people who post that suggestion in the group, but you can see right now why this doesn't work. So we don't encourage that, but in terms of editing your palette, assume that that's going to take a little bit of time, because it's definitely not the situation where, a lot of other Quiltalongs, there's a group of fabrics you have to use, or somebody gives you paint chips or whatever, and that's, you don't learn as much about in terms of color theory by doing that. And part of what you're paying for is learning how to be more confident with color and how to edit palettes in a variety of situations.
And the first installment is released on October 1st. So you have lots of time to think about this. And even after the first installment comes out and you watch the video, you may reconsider a couple of your choices. We also like to show things like what might not work. So here's an example of a fabric that we did not include in the lights, just because it's very kind of grayed out, desaturated, but it's also so much lighter than all the others that if you had little slivers of this in the quilt, they might appear as holes. Another fabric that we did not include is this larger scale print. And the challenge here is there are areas that are very dark and there are areas that are light. So you could imagine if you cut a 1-inch strip of this, in some places it might be a light, in others it might be a dark, and it could be visually confusing
That's
in the
the
finished quilt.
that's the issue with batiks sometimes as well, is that within one batik there can be a dark and there can be a medium, or a medium and a light. Also sometimes with grunge fabrics, some of them there can be so much modeling that the value changes within the print. And some of them are absolutely fine and will work well for this.
Similarly for batiks, there's some batiks that are all over
Absolutely.
dark or all over light, but it's the ones that go from dark to light within the same fabric
Super blotchy.
that are challenging. So this, we hope, gives you an idea of an approach you might take with your own stash. You can make this with all genres of fabric. You know, we often say, or we often talk to people who have developed Civil War reproduction print stashes over the years, but no longer make that kind of quilt. This is a quilt that might work beautifully with those, because many of them are small scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
And usually you have a real range of values. So, you know, modern quilts don't require, in general, a specific fabric. It's about the thinking, the structure, the design. And so you can often use almost unexpected fabrics in these quilts.
The only genre I disagree with is novelty prints. That if you don't want to, this is not a SpongeBob SquarePants or you know, because you are going to be cutting things up a lot, and you don't want to in any type of genre where there are large dinosaurs or large race cars or whatever is not going to work.
I think in general, the challenge with novelty fabrics, which can be very fun when used in certain ways, but they're recognizable. So instead of seeing blue or red or dark or light, you see beer can, you see state U, you see, you know, just sewing machines, and your mind kind of recognizes the images in the novelty fabric rather than seeing it as part of a palette. And that gets very distracting.
The other thing is that when you're cutting things up into smaller pieces, you end up with an arm here and a head there, and you know, a deer antlers or whatever. And you know, if it's a really small scale novelty print where there are little teeny tiny 1/4-inch rainbows or something like that, that would work.
Yeah, like once we used a fabric for a quilt. It was a very kind of beautiful minimal quilt where the pattern was super subtle dog paw prints.
Right.
But no one would ever have known it unless you saw it as part of this larger collection
Because
of
it was so tiny.
dog fabric.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, we didn't even notice the paw
Yeah,
prints
until
until we saw it later because it was so subtle. So, you know, everything is about the context in which it's used.
But we know that you all want to be able to use your stashes more, and we hope that you will really enjoy being able to use either solids or print bundles or working with the bundles that we have, because I think this is, for if you're a scrappy quilt lover, this will be a great Quiltalong for you.
And it's definitely different from our previous Quiltalongs, many of which had a large amount of a single background fabric. So your quilt had a lot of color within either a kind of vanilla background or a teal background. The majority of the quilt comes from these 3 piles with just a little bit of sashing that gives structure in places. So your sashing fabric will not dominate the quilt the way a background fabric sometimes does.
So there are often people who want to combine prints and solids, and we never want to say you should never. There are very few nevers that we ever suggest. The challenge becomes if you mix prints with solids. Sometimes the solids can look very flat. We have seen people do it very masterfully, but it's you're creating a challenge that may or may not work out. And our goal is always for the most number of people to be able to be successful.
Yeah, and I think mixing prints and solids is more likely to work with a quilt where you're making every decision intentionally from the beginning. With a mystery quilt,
Exactly.
you can't understand the role of each fabric until it's all done. And inadvertently, you might cause some, make some decisions that aren't what you would have wished.
Right.
So I would recommend either prints or solids, or, prints can be mixed with yarn dyes, batiks, but I would keep solids by themselves for almost any mystery quilt.
Or you could use solids for the sashing and the binding.
Oh, and prints for the rest.
Yeah, that
could work
Yeah.
really well,
I
actually.
probably wouldn't use solids for the piecing and a tone-on-tone for the sashing or the binding, because it will call a little bit too much attention to itself. So these are recommendations, not rules.
Yeah.
So it's your quilt and you should do whatever you like, but we're trying to help the most number of people be successful and feel good about their quilts at the end.
So as a reminder, when you sign up for the Quiltalong, your email will have a link. Immediately click that link. That comes right away and within a minute. So if you don't see it, check your junk or spam folder. When you click that link, it gives you a download, which is an introductory letter that has the fabric requirements, the dates, and it has, most importantly, the address that you'll put in your browser bar, not in Google, but in the top of your browser bar to take you to the secret page. So that is a very important document that you will print and hang on to.
You only have 30 days?
60 days.
60 days to make that one click.
Yes.
And
you need to download.
Yeah, it's one click. And this is a standard throughout downloadable patterns. Typically, most people just give you 5 days. We give you 60 days. But once that 60 days, if you haven't downloaded it, it's one click. You have 60 days to one click. But you need to do that because once it expires, we cannot resend your link.
Right.
So
and once you have this,
you don't need
you have
anything
access
else.
for all of 2026. You just have to get this within 60 days.
You have to do that one click, and you have to just
How many
put it
clicks?
one click, and you have 60 days to make one click and put it in your downloads, and then you're all set.
So we'll be giving you lots more support, advice, encouragement, laughter, I hope, in the 6 installments. Our final installment is November 7th.
Yeah.
And on that date, we will be releasing the final installment and showing you, revealing the mystery quilt that we have made. So that doesn't mean you have to be finished then.
Exactly.
It just...
You don't have to have even started by then.
No. We definitely have some people who wait until they see the reveal to actually start.
Or sign up even.
Or even sign up.
That's fine.
We have hundreds of people usually sign up after because they're like, oh, I want to do that. So we really look forward to having you with us on this matchmaking journey.
We hope we'll find a good date for Charlotte.
And for all of your
Yes,
fabrics.
Exactly. So we promise a happy ever after
Yes.
for you. And look forward to seeing you on October 1st. We'll be taking questions about this Quiltalong on the September 1st.
Quilts first.
Quilts first, the October and the November quilts first as well.
And if you're new to this, Quilts First is a live stream that we do here from our studio on the 1st of each month. It's on Facebook Live through our main Facebook page. We take that recording and post it to our YouTube channel afterwards, usually later that day or the next day. So it's yet a little bit more information to help you with this all.
So we look forward to seeing what questions you have about it. Feel free to let us know on social media and post if you have any questions, because if you have a question, somebody else might be interested as well, and we'll be sure to answer that. And we look forward to seeing you on October 1st.
See ya.